Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Everyone, welcome to the Success is a Choice podcasting network. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler, and today we are bringing you another episode of Leaders Growing Leaders, the Leaders Growing Leaders series here on the Success is a Choice podcast network. Before we get to this, I want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by the leadershipplaybook.com, the leadershipplaybook.com. Improve your team, improve your athletic department, just 2 minutes at a time, hundreds of video lessons. Great teams have great teammates, the leadershipplaybook.com. Well, today's guest is Valerie Miyares. She is from Palm Beach County, and she is the district athletic director down there. And Palm Beach County is huge. It is just massive. She has one of the largest districts she's responsible for in the country. So she's going to be on here to talk today a little bit about how she coaches, but more importantly, how she leads the leaders, how she leads athletic directors, how she helps leaders, coaches, and student athletes to move forward. So Valerie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Palm Beach County, how big is it?
So we're the 10th largest school district in the country. We service, I think we're right around 180,000 students. And then for us in athletics, I have 26 high schools that I work with directly. And we also have 36 middle schools that we work with directly as well. So
that's all? That's all, huh?
That's it.
Just a few.
That's it. It's, it's really just a hobby at this time.
Yeah, it's such a big district. And, you have a background in sports, and I always like to kind of figure out what a person's idea of success or definition of success is. And, with someone like you who oversees so many different schools, who have so many different sports, but also you were a multi-sport athlete yourself in college. So I'm very curious about where you look at what's your definition of success, or what you look at success as. Do you look at it differently now when you were an athlete, when you were an AD in a building, as opposed to being a district-wide AD? Just kind of talk us through your idea of success.
Yeah, it's interesting, as you grow through life and you transition into different things. I mean, obviously the goalpost gets moved all kinds of ways, and so, as an athlete, as a college athlete, I think everything was production based, stats, wins, losses. I appreciate you mentioning I was a multi-sport athlete. So, 4 years of volleyball, 2 years of softball, and a year of basketball. And I'd say that the most competition always came from the baseball team. So, and my group of guy best friends from college are all baseball players. And you couldn't go the year. I'd be in the middle of volleyball season, and my closest friend, Scott, he always was on top of me, already going to beat you by batting average, going to beat you by on base percentage, it's like you have all these different, little, bets and threats and all kinds of stuff. And so, when you're in college, those kinds of goals are meaningful to you, because they personally impact you as far as production on the floor and so forth. And of course, you got the academic side of it, and then you start becoming a professional and things change. And so coming into athletics as a professional, you learn as a young coach, it was all about those same things. It was all about stats and wins and losses. And it wasn't really about the business side of being the head coach, because nobody really talks to you about that. And, it's like, do you have a background in this? Are you willing to serve in this duty? Okay, great. Here you go. And really, athletics at the interscholastic level, education-based level, a lot of times can be kind of birth by fire, and so you change your success level. So in the beginning, it was about wins and losses. And then as you make mistakes, as parents become upset, as you have interactions with kids, you start to reflect quite a bit. Well, what else do I need to do as a head coach, as a building administrator, to kind of grow myself in this area? And so you learn to get through that. And so after, 12, 15 years of school-based AD, you start kind of going away. Like, and I find myself in the interviews, when I'm interviewing for head coaches, like with principals and ADs and their committees, everybody wants to talk about sport IQ and, their wins and losses. I'm like, okay, that's good. Can we talk about the business side of being a coach and what that means and, what those metrics look like? And so it's very interesting kind of, just how your mindset grows with how you perceive success the deeper you go into the years that you serve. So I don't know if I'm giving you a true definition, but what I can say is that definition certainly evolves. And so now as a district AD and, as a school-based AD, it was, am I retaining my coaches? Do my coaches feel they have a great relationship with me? Are they getting as much as I can give them? Because, as a school-based AD, you're working on low budget to no budget. You are just trying to make, you're the magician there, smoke and mirrors. And, and then here at the district AD level, success can be identified in so many ways. Are we, how many student athletes do we have coming through the door on our Title IX numbers? Are we meeting compliance, federally, state-wise? How many of my athletic directors are remaining in the room, or what's the reason that they're leaving and that they're turning over? Are we attracting new coaches? So there's just so many other definitions, so many definitions of success. And I just think it's unique to everyone. But what I will say is that my definition and my thresholds and the goalposts have all changed in every evolution of me as a professional. And I hope it does for everybody else. I think it should. If your success metric stays the same from when you're that 23-year-old to now 20 years later, we got, you're probably living in your same hometown, and whatnot, so I feel that the evolution is incredibly important when you're a leader.
Well, and you're not hitting home runs and worrying about your on-base percentage anymore either.
No, not at all.
so definitely your idea there, performance-based has changed a little bit, but you're also not in a building anymore. You're overseeing, you said 26 high schools and 36 middle schools.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you're doing then to help other ADs be the best that they can be as well? Or even what have you seen your ADs do with their coaches to help coach them up, to coach the coaches a little bit? Because oftentimes, I think people mistake leadership for just do what I tell you to do. I'm in charge. I have a business card. I'm the boss. So do what I tell you to do. But the best leaders are oftentimes developing other leaders, not just getting compliant followers around them. So are there some things that you're doing to develop other leaders, or things that you're seeing in your building ADs for them to develop other leaders as well?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have the why conversation rather than I'm the boss, so therefore it is. And I think that people don't see a lot of success with that. I've seen that. I've seen that with colleagues or people who report to a manager or supervisor like that, and nothing is coming out. There's so much resentment, there because there isn't a discussion. And I'll tell you, I've been through that, as a building administrator. It's like, do you want to lead from a point of positional power? I don't know. I don't think that that's the right, for me, that's not the right way to lead. So, being a servant leader, I think, is what we find a lot in education. And that's explaining the why component. But when you want to talk about the why component, why you're doing something or you're creating initiatives or you're leading or asking, you have to be willing to sit down and have a conversation. And sometimes that feedback from other people isn't going to be exactly what you want to have. So for me, it's not just giving the directive, but here is why we're doing it? Is there an understanding for why we're doing it? Are there questions for why we're doing it? And I'm hoping that sometimes when you look to have that kind of exchange with people, it's a way of showing what type of leader you are. I always value, when somebody tells me that, it's just not black and white. Now, are there some things where it's like, listen, Val said, this is what we're doing. Yeah, this is what we're doing. Like there are some things that are like that. And so when you want to try and build capacity with people, I think it's really important to not have a guillotine, because if you have a guillotine and you're just, that's it, like this is the way it is, nothing further, you are not building any sort of capacity with your team whatsoever. And I don't like that. And I really struggle with people when I watch it and I see it or people talk to me about it. I'm like, well, what'd you get out of that? Well, nothing. Okay.
Well, the number one takeaway, sometimes you go to church and they say, if you don't listen to anything else today, this is the one thing you need to listen to. The one takeaway from Valerie is don't have a guillotine.
Yeah. Is it guillotine? I don't know. I wasn't
either
sure.
way. Don't have either one. That is a bad thing. It'll also get you fired in most districts as well.
More than likely.
More than likely, not a good idea. But even the figurative guillotine, which is what Valerie was talking about. I love that. I've never heard that before. I never thought about it that way, but nice job with that. So not just leading leaders, but leading students. What are some ways that you've done it or you've seen done in your district that you'd like to brag about? Some ways to maybe to lift these students up, because at the end of the day, these teenagers are going to be in somebody's community, whether it's the Palm Beach community or some other community. And our communities, our towns, 5, 10, 15 years from now will be better or worse based upon what we do now with these teenagers. So are there some things that you're doing or you've seen done in your district that you'd like to brag about?
Yeah, I think there's a handful of things. I always thought as a sitting administrator at a school that there was no bigger level of appreciation that I had than when my door would be open and a student or a student athlete would step in and say, you got a couple minutes? When somebody wants to sit, now somebody steps in, you want to, can you have a couple minutes? It's usually, what do you want? But when you're there and you're with the students, I think it's great when you have young people that want to come in and talk with you. So just on a very low and small level, I always really value. One of the things, and I've talked about this before, I actually talked about it with Dr. Baghurst in the FSU Coach Clinic podcast, is how much high school, the trickle down effect that we have from NFL and collegiate or not even NFL, but professional athletics, collegiate athletics, and how that dumps down into high school athletics can cause some things that we really have to try and wrap our arms around and provide leadership. And so one of those things is with the student section. And so the student section can get out of control. Some of them, in a very positive way, sometimes in a very negative way. As a city school-based AD, I had the opportunity to be at a school in Orlando with a very well-developed and hardcore student section. And it was hard at times. Like during basketball season, the refs would have to stop the game. There'd be a lot of, cursing and different things. And so I said, we got to change this. And so I grabbed a few of our more prominent student athletes that were in the middle of that. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to create something new. How about we do student section captains? And they just love that. They're like, this is so cool. They're like, and so I said, listen, this is what we're going to do. I said, we're going to meet every once in a while. I said, when we have big games and we have our rivalry games, I'd like to talk early in the week. What's the theme you want to do? What are the props that you're bringing? And also, I need you guys in certain rows because when things get out of control, I need to call one of you down so that you can then send the message up. And it was terrific, and it really worked quite well. I felt that the interaction between administration and the kids slowed down quite a bit at that point in time. And that was something I was really proud of because that was a huge negative about people coming to the school to play. And you want to make it a hostile environment to a degree. You know what I mean? Like that's the benefit of home court advantage, but you don't want to make it to where it's salacious and profane laden. And you know what I mean? And with social media and pictures and things like that, it can get ugly very, very quickly. So from my perspective, that was a great thing. With some of my ADs, we see student athlete leadership teams, and mentor teams and things like that they're doing. that I just think that are exceptional. I mean, even some of our grassroots items where we have coaches taking students, to read to elementary kids, or, just that care, because, when those kids, I think of my nieces that are 7 and 9, and they look at, the kids that are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, or 9th through 12th grade, they just think they're rock stars, and the impact that, that has, I think, is incredible. And so it's nice to see our athletic directors and our coaches choosing to get out there and show the right side of athletics with their leadership has been a good thing.
Yeah, it's so crazy. You mentioned rock stars. I remember when I was 5th and 6th grade, or even 7th grade, I thought those high school kids, those seniors, were like the people I see on TV. They were rock stars. And then when I became a junior and senior in high school, 18 years old, I didn't think I was that same rock star.
A bit of a letdown, huh? Jamie?
Yeah, I didn't feel like I was larger than life, like those people were when I was in 5th and 6th grade. But the same way, when you turn 40 and 50, you don't feel like your parents. You don't feel quite like what you thought your parents were.
Yes, completely agree. That is becoming a realization. Yes.
Well, some of the best leaders are people that are able to constantly learn, constantly grow, develop themselves, be better. It's hard to constantly pour out.
Yeah.
And give if you don't have anything in your tank as well. What are some things that you do to grow and develop as a leader, as a person, to develop yourself personally as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think people forget you have to give to yourself. You have to do that, because one, if you don't, you become obsolete. And I think we see that even just with some of, like, for instance, some of college coaches, college football coaches, with the refusal to modernize and dealing with, things that are new on the horizon to make you successful, and not wanting to give in. Listen, I get it. I'm anti-technology. Like, getting an iPod was like, before, like, there were phones and stuff, but like actually that was an act of Congress. I can't even begin to tell you. So I understand that people are stubborn and want to stay in their ways and everything that they have works, but you have to pour into yourself. You have to be willing. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think willingness is the biggest part of self-development, like you have here on the screen, or, of growth, is that you have to understand you don't know it all. You don't. And I think that's the beauty of our conferences and our workshops, is the opportunity to sit and listen to other people and be able to take that, going and attending these meetings nationally and statewide, what they open you up to as far as, just embracing what other people have to offer has been wonderful. And, in our kind of business, there's no reinventing the wheel. It's how do you make the wheel run smoother? How do you make sure there's enough air in it all the time? Like, you're just picking up things from other people, but you have to be willing to do that. The number of people that I've listened to and have said, I'm not going there. I'm not doing this conference. I'm only going because I have to. I think about what their performance looks like, and it explains a lot, because you can imagine if they're like that with themselves, what are they like with their team? And that's hard, and if you don't have somebody that's willing to do the work for themselves, they're not going to do the work for the people around them. So for me, I love the conferences and the meetings and the classes. We talked a lot about that leading into NIAAA and what that offers. And year after year after year, that has been an incredible source of wealth for me, whether it's actually the content in those breakouts, the content in those classrooms, or if it's the time spending one-on-one. For example, I made a great relationship with the district athletic team in Clark County in Las Vegas, another large, huge district. So when I go out to visit sometime this year, I'm going to be stopping by the office, and we're going to spend a day or two together. And we're going to learn, how some things are done in Vegas and how some things are done here. And I think that's terrific, because if you can collaborate with our other people, if you can cross-educate and see how things are doing, it means everything. And so for me, that's really the way I like to do it. I'm pulling along my team. In the past, I've been here for 7 years. They really didn't realize that these conferences and things were available to them, and so now we're getting half the group to get to FIAAA, and this year I got 2 or 3 to the national conference. That's a big accomplishment for us, because in 5 or 6 years prior, it was just me going. So, I think that those professional development opportunities in education-based athletics are just absolutely essential.
Very cool. And one of the, now more than ever, it seems like it's easy to get professional development, or you can get it online. There's so many things that you can do, whether it's YouTube or whatever. And we're going to come back to Valerie in just a moment, and she's going to give us a couple mistakes that she's made during her career or challenges she's overcome. But we really like the mistakes. We like hearing about that because life is too short to make them all ourselves. So if we can learn from her, maybe we don't have to commit our own mistakes. But related to professional development, want to mention to you watching this on YouTube or Rumble, or maybe you're listening to this on the your favorite audio podcast platform. Every week, there are free webinars available, free leadership webinars. You can get those at freeleadershipworkshop.com, freeleadershipworkshop.com. Culture, teamwork, leadership, captain, success, coaching, all different topics each week. And if you can't make it, if you got a class or just life happens, we can also send you the replays of those as well if you've registered. So freeleadershipworkshop.com for your free professional development. So Valerie, I have stalled long enough. I didn't plan on saying any of that about freeleadershipworkshop.com, freeleadershipworkshop.com. I was just stalling to give you time to think of a mistake or something you've done during your career or something you've overcome or learned from that maybe you can help us with.
So, Jamie, I don't know if you know or not, but all the mistakes that are made in high school athletics are not allowed to be on this kind of podcast because usually they're so hilarious and they're just not PG rated a lot of time.
Or people wouldn't believe it. No, that couldn't have happened.
I swear, a book could be written with the nuances, the bloopers, the things that are unbelievable that happen in high school athletics. There's so many cringeworthy moments, just as many successful moments that there is just the same amount right behind it that are just absolutely cringeworthy, and it happens, and it happens. It tends to happen, and so I'm thinking about something that I could share with you that is, relative and not something that's beyond PG rated. So I'll talk about something from when I was a newer athletic director. So I'd started my first 5 years at my alma mater as a teacher and a coach, and they opened an assistant AD position, and then that became a women's athletic director position. In my final year, I was women's AD, and then I opened a brand new high school in another county here in South Florida. And while I was teaching class, in addition to being athletic director, which, by the way, anybody listening that has control over a classroom list, please don't put your athletic director in the classroom. let them work. It's really hard to do 2 full-time jobs at 100% capacity. So that's just my little plug for high school ADs around the country that might have classroom duties. But I remember my principal calling me in, and he would say to me, listen, you got a lot on your plate. You have an assistant athletic director, turn over some of the work to them, let them check eligibility and things, for some of the teams. And so, of course, being compliant and wanting to, I did that. Well, then again, lo and behold, what happens? Eligibility gets checked. It gets checked incorrectly. And there's a student athlete that's played the entire season with a GPA that's underneath the allowable thresholds. And so now here you have a winning team in a first-year high school going into playoffs, and you have to go back, and now you have to forfeit all of these games. You have to report it to your state athletic association. You're going to have financial fines. And then the principal demands, an understanding of what had happened. And then you try to explain, well, I took your advice, and I went ahead and I delegated this work that I really didn't want to have to delegate. I delegated it out, and this is the end product. Well, of course, the principal doesn't like that conversation because that's what the principal had wanted. And that, creates some animosity, and it creates some difficultness, but it's a huge, cycle of the difficulties. You're dealing with kids that are so disappointed and upset. You're dealing with the one student athlete that caused all the losses. You're dealing with the family being angry. You're dealing with the principal being pissed off. You've thrown your assistant AD under the bus. Like there's all kinds of things there. So with my group of ADs now as a district AD, and then as I advanced in my career as a school, as a building AD, eligibility and compliance never would leave from me, because if a team was going to have to forfeit something, it was going to be because of me. It wasn't going to be because of anyone else. And, in a lot of ways, we do a lot of things cashless now, but things, ticket money, like things like that. It's like, listen, all of those big ticket items are going to be on me as the head athletic director, because if there's an issue, I'm going to take that. And so that's really been one of the biggest growing pains. One of the things that has always stayed in my mind is that instance at that high school when that happens with the eligibility. And so as I have new athletic directors, and they want to talk about what can they give their assistant athletic directors, I tell them, listen, like, you can delegate some things out, but this piece, eligibility and compliance, should never be delegated out for these reasons. And I tell them, and I tell the ADs all the time, you think I'm perfect? You think I got to this seat unblemished, no issues? Or, this job is about making mistakes. And I always tell people, it's not about the mistake that you made, although sometimes it is, but it's not about the mistake that you made. It's how you respond to the mistake. That's really what separates you from the pack. And if you continue to make the mistake, then you're not cut out for the job. And so every time that, we have to go through a self-report or an issue, and people can get down on themselves. They have a lot of pride in their work. I explain to them, listen, this is a mistake. Let's not make it again. Let's learn from this, and that's really just been a big kind of point, with me and with the team. And so that's just an item that was a low level, just a low point for me having to deal with as a school-based athletic administrator. It has stayed with me it's been 15 years now, and I think about it often, and it's tough. So I hope that people will hear that. If they've had that situation, they'll survive. And hopefully they've learned from it and have made some corrective actions and some planning to ensure that, those pieces don't happen again.
Well, we believe that, leadership and having people on our show with positions of leadership is more than just dotting I's, crossing T's, even though those things are important. We want people that inspire, that provide hope, that are dealers in hope, that provide a vision for people. However, if you're good at dotting I's and crossing T's, sometimes that one elicits more trust, that people will have more trust in you because you're competent, but it also it frees you up to inspire others and do those kinds of things. So even though we want leaders that inspire, we also want some leaders that are able to be competent in what they do. Is there a hack or a strategy, some managerial thing or some administrative thing that you've learned throughout the years that might free up more of your time, or that we might listen to, we might apply this and it frees up more of our time than to have more interaction with staff people or students?
I think, listening to that story that I just told you, there's such a fear in this job that you're going to trip and fall down, and it's going to cause a huge domino effect. And so I think a lot of people that are in an athletic director's role, an athletic administrative role, including myself, have a fear of delegating and letting other people pitch in, naturally, because maybe we were burnt by that in the past. But really, I will say, knowing your limitations and when your cup is full is going to be the only way that you can figure out what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. And so, for instance, here it's in Palm Beach, it's myself, and we have an athletic specialist, and she works with the middle school side. But sometimes I just have so many things going on at the high school level. I call some of my veteran or more competent school-based ADs, to be extra hands-on deck with me. And that provides me an opportunity to just get a little bit of breathing room so that I can go ahead and I can do some other things. And I'm really grateful for that. But I think one of the biggest things is, what is your capacity as a leader? What is your capacity as a supervisor? When you reach that threshold, what's your escape valve? And how do you relieve the pressure a little bit so that you can continue to work, with integrity, so that you can continue to work accomplishing things? And I think it's putting the right people around you, and that can be difficult. I think we know in athletics that it's like one of those situations. I'm with the band. Like, everybody likes to be a part of athletics, and people like to build relationships sometimes for the wrong reasons in athletics. And you'd be surprised, by that, is that some of these schools hold exceptional contracts with exceptional brands. Let's look at like just Bishop Gorman or my alma mater, Shauna Madonna in South Florida, to get, on the coaching staff and get in the athletic staff, are huge gets. And, and it's making sure that you're just putting the right people around you. But for me, it's taken a long time to understand what the limitation is, when the cup's going to boil over, and how do I relieve some of that? And I think knowing that is going to make you incredibly successful to continue to lead with your program, and then to continue to be able to manage your time efficiently and effectively as a leader.
Well, we definitely appreciate your time today, and we appreciate all that you're doing for staff in Palm Beach County and even statewide in Florida in your role with the FI AAA. So we appreciate all of that. We also appreciate all of you watching this live, watching this on replay, or listening to this. Thank you so much, and we hope that you can find ways to inspire the people around you to make other people better as well. Feel free to share this show, especially if you have an athletic director friend or somebody that has a position of leadership. Feel free to share this show. Valerie had some great insights. And until next time, a reminder, success is a choice. What choice will you make today?